This is how I make the router bases. First I cut the pieces of plastic out, basically to a rough round. Then what I do is I take a Forstner bit and drill a 2-inch hole to the proper depth for the nut on the top of the seal. Here we have the whole counterboard to the proper depth, and we'll use that when we throw it on the metal lathe to turn the outer diameter on it and to bore the centers later. And while we're at it, we'll do one more larger one for the plunge router base. Next, I'm just going to drill an undersized hole through the center so it'll be easy to get the boring bar through later on the lathe. Next, I go out to my shop and I take that counterboard hole, and I'm going to take this and chuck it in the lathe of my 1950 South Bend lathe, and then turn the outside of it to get it round. So as you can see now, we have a perfectly round plate off that center counterbore. Now I'm going to flip the lathe jaws around and use a boring bar to clean up the inside center holes. Alright, now I have to flip the jaws on my chuck. First thing you do is take out the screws and then wipe them down, put them back on, and then tighten up the screws. And I'll repeat this until all of them are changed. Alright, let's flip the jaws. Screws back in, and we're ready to mount the base plate back in the lathe. Next I have to just remove this 4-way tool post, and I'm replacing it with a boring bar to take the center out. Next what I do is I take this plastic disc that I have now and I put it back in the lathe with the counterboard side, and I'll grab that on the outside this time. And then I just got to set up the boring bar. The boring bar is all set up, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start boring out the center. just continue checking the hole, and we want to get this out to be 1.187. Right now we're about 1.15, so a little more, and that center hole will be done. Alright, I also have a smaller trim router base that I'm doing at the same time to kind of speed things up. Alright, let's check it now. Looks like 1.186, 87, 88. That looks good. Now what I'm going to do is just put the final counter bore in for the bushing with the boring bar. Looks like we just got to take just a hair more. Actually, just had to peel some of that backing paper away from the hole. And now we just have exactly flush, perfect fit for the bushing. Alright, the next step is going to be to machine a flat on the new base for the plunge router to kind of match the flat on the old one. So what I've basically done is I just took and put the bushing assembly on it to get it centered. And I put one of the brass bushings in here, and I'm going to use a centering pin for the inlay kit to drop in there. And then I'm just going to slide this over there. It's a pretty good tight fit, and then I can just mark this and I can cut the flat. Next, I decided to just throw it on the milling machine to mill that flat. Right, so now I went back and I centered that base using the same centering pin and bushing setup, clamped it to the new plastic base, and now I'm going to use the transfer punch to mark the 3 mounting holes. Now I'm just going to drill the hole. Now we just have to put a couple counter bores in for the screw heads. We now have the plunge base completed. We just have to do a little bit of layout for where to put the lights and start working on putting the lights in. Alright, this smaller base is done now. As you can see, I wound up having to machine a little spot out of it to recess the router into. And it's made to take the same standard bushings. And I'm going to be using this one on a small Harbor Freight trim router where I just take the bottom plate off of it. And then I put a bit in to center it, and I'll just screw this on like that and be done. As you can see, this is basically taking that little $20 Harbor Freight trim router and made it into a little router that's capable of doing inlay work and giving it a much more stable stance. With the bushing removed, you can see it really does make it a nice stable router for doing small work, and it actually works pretty good for $20. Working on lighting up the plunge base. I got two more of the LED lights at the dollar store that I've used before to take apart and use for parts. Now we're in the middle of milling in all the pockets for all the electronics and batteries. Battery pocket. On the pocket for the battery hold down now. Alright, all the milling for the electronics is now done. Just a matter of figuring out where to put the switch. Put a pocket in for that. We've got all the pockets machined. The pocket for the switch to go into. Pocket for the switch to go into, the batteries and all the wiring and lights. Just about done. We just gotta finish wiring up this switch here. Couple wires to that, glue it in place, and that's it. So here we have all the replacement plastic router bases I made for assortment of routers. First one is for the Bosch 1617, and that's with the regular base on it. And as you can see, that one is self-contained and lit. The next one is for the 1617 with the plunge base, which with a little bit different size. And that one also is self-contained and lit up. The next one is for Bosch 1604. And that one has no lights, but it still has the Porter cable bushing set up. And then the last one is for a little Harbor Freight trim router that I picked up. And that one also is not lit, but it sure makes a difference in how stable the router is. Okay, now as you can see, the switch for this one is kind of just buried in the front, so it's really easier to use when you're using the router. This has been a fun little job that allows all my routers to use the same industry standard Porter cable bushings now, and make them a little bit easier to be interchangeable. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.